I read the DA manifesto for those who do not have time to read it for themselves. Welcome to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the Comrades. I'm Katlego, and I hope that these videos are helping you better prepare for the 29th of May 2024. So straight to it, the DA starts by promising to either remove or fix the legislation that causes employment difficulties. They will target legislation that makes it difficult for the private sector to hire apprentices by ensuring that employers are more willing to hire people who qualify as apprentices without having to treat them as employees. This is meant to allow apprentices to gain skills and experience to allow for them to later be hired as employees with experience, among other things. They seek to remove the racist laws that have been implemented by the ANC. These are laws like BEE that are race-based, and removing them is a good thing. Why do I say it's a good thing? Because racist laws have no place in South Africa, or else we will always be in a racist cycle. We need to get people qualified, and we need people to get jobs and promotions based on their merit alone. All races are suffering in South Africa, and we should all be treated fairly and equally. That is a promise that I can vote for. The DA promises to make sure that small and medium enterprises are not affected by the bargaining council agreements. This allows for small businesses to grow without having to deal with the demands and nonsense of unions. Bargaining councils burden companies with requirements that small businesses simply do not have the financial means to implement, which stands in the way of the growth of small businesses in South Africa. Additionally, the DA wants to make labor unions pay a deposit to an appropriate independent body before they can go on any strike. If the labor union causes any damage to any property, then the deposit will be used to reimburse the people who suffered the losses and damages caused by those unions. That is great news. Unions have been terrorizing our country, and if they do any damage or cause littering like we have seen them do in the past, then money to fix, to clean, and to repair should come out of their pocket. That is great, right? The DA also promises to not raise taxes, but to find the group of people that is not paying taxes in South Africa. There are people who import goods and avoid paying taxes, which is bad. As you might have seen on our recent video on our channel, we have people that smuggle fuel, cigarettes, and many other things into South Africa, including counterfeit clothes and other goods. This means those people are not paying their taxes, and they are also killing our local industries. If our local industries are dead, it also means job losses. This policy is valuable. Taxes on South Africans need to be reviewed. This is a big deal. The DA promises to stabilize public debt and limit government borrowing. The ANC did not even see this as a problem. Imagine. The ANC does not even see that they are killing our country with debt. They overspend and overborrow. The DA intends to do something about that, and that is necessary. They wish to encourage responsible spending. They have not said how they seek to do that, but based on their previous performance, I don't see a reason to doubt their intention or their promise. We can't have ministers living like kings on our taxes, or even the habits that we have seen in Eskom, where they spend more than 30,000 Rand on knee guards that cost less than 1,000 Rand. They wish to have a balanced approach to privatization of state-owned entities. Personally, I have a love and hate relationship with this idea. You don't have to really privatize things for them to do well. Eskom performed well as a public entity before the ANC. Transnet performed well as a public entity before the ANC. So why does privatization have to be the only solution that you as a DA see? If Eskom and Transnet have succeeded without being privatized before, I don't see why we can't make them succeed without privatization the same way it was done. So I do not support this portion of the manifesto. What do you think of the DA manifesto so far? Let us know in the comments section below, please. Moving on, they wish to encourage South African citizens to save more. That is a wonderful thing, as more and more of us need to be encouraged and taught to save more instead of always spending everything we earn. South Africans, especially Black South Africans, have a financial discipline problem. And if we can change that culture, this could really help us and our nation. Things don't change automatically. There needs to be a clear intention and plan. Furthermore, the DA wants to reduce the red tape. This refers to the silly inconveniences that the ANC government has created, making it hard for small businesses to get going faster. This is definitely something beneficial for the country, because the faster the private sector can start companies, especially small companies, the faster the job creation process. The manifesto promises to spend more on infrastructure like energy, transportation, and communication. These are the important things that the ANC neglected, which is why we have Transnet, Eskom, and many state-owned companies collapsing. The DA also wants to encourage internationalization, and they don't seem to want to protect certain local industries. This can be very, very dangerous for South Africa and her people. This is a policy that has the potential to harm local producers of goods. There are certain producers of goods that are so far backward in comparison to the world that if those industries are not protected by the South African government, they will be eliminated by international producers of similar products. We need a balance between encouraging internationalization and protecting the local businesses, and I do not see how the DA plans to protect local businesses. One of the ways to do this would be allowing for local business operating costs to be low for products and services to be produced at a fraction of the cost. This can be done by making sure that union demands are not allowed to cripple the local businesses in our country. Remove or significantly reduce taxes on fuel and many such issues. China has destroyed many countries' industries through the provision of cheaper goods such as steel. Many people across the globe have seen their industries decimated due to a stupid policy like this very one. If you're going to adopt industrialization and internationalization, then make sure that you have a clear plan to protect local companies. They should be your priority. I really don't like this policy, DA. The DA thinks our current electricity problems are due to what they call an outdated model of state-led power generation. They say this has resulted in weak policy and unreliable energy supply. This does not make any sense to me. What is so outdated about state-owned energy generation and supply? If weak policy is affecting efficiency, then change the policy. There are still countries that have state-owned generation and supply companies. If private companies want to generate electricity, they should be allowed to. But state-owned energy companies like Eskom should be encouraged to compete in the free market. Since the DA believes that cadre deployment, chronic mismanagement, and corruption have resulted in Eskom becoming inefficient, then whoever comes in after ANC should focus on ANC cadres being removed, poor management being replaced, while corruption is rewarded with punishments. That's all. I don't see how privatization is essential to get rid of these problems. These are problems that require a different solution to privatization. The DA says a lack of investment in new power generation has resulted in Eskom being reliant on old and unreliable coal power stations. Well, since the DA in the same manifesto promises to increase investments in infrastructure, then it should be easy to invest in the infrastructure development and maintenance required to bring Eskom back to its former glory. Hence, no need for privatization, right? They say the solution to Eskom must come from increased power supply from outside of Eskom. What do you mean it must come from outside of Eskom? I'm not getting a reason for why it has to come from outside Eskom. It seems to me that the DA has no faith in the abilities of South Africans and what is possible with Eskom. Eskom can be run better. It has been run better by the apartheid government, so what stops us from doing that right now? If private citizens and companies can generate electricity for themselves or their town, then they should be allowed to do it. But Eskom can still do it. I do understand that under ANC, privatization may be the only way to save Eskom, but the fact that Eskom is not privately owned is not the problem. The problem is mismanagement, corruption, and other issues unrelated to ownership. Competence, corruption, accountability are definitely some of the biggest problems at Eskom. The same applies for the police, but you're not calling for the privatization of the police service, are you? Private security companies exist, but the police remain in place. We need to save Eskom and allow independent power producers to exist. Why? Just in case, guys. That's all. Eskom was successful even though its business was designed to be a public service providing cheap electricity. The cheap electricity is the reason why industries boomed in South Africa in the 20th century. Cheap electricity and cheap labor are the reasons why South Africa was so close to being a first world country. There were private companies back then, but they were bought by the government to make sure that there is no wasteful competition between the government and private companies. Eskom was once run by competent people, including this one time when a scientist residing in America was lured back into South Africa. For what? For his expertise. This is the kind of mindset that is lacking from our current government. The ANC government does not understand the importance of having serious, patriotic experts in high-ranking positions. Here is my position on this. There are certain services that are so vital that they should not be run for profit's sake. These services include police, military, hospitals, schools, water supply, and electricity supply. These are things that can be produced without being too expensive for consumers and businesses, but they should also not be produced at a loss. Right now, they are produced at a loss. Private companies should be allowed to compete, of course, but we need competence in government of South Africa, not this rubbish we have been dealing with for the past 30 years. Private companies can compete, but the government should provide a service to make sure the citizens are not charged exorbitant rates. This is like the problem we currently have with our telecommunications industries. They have become too greedy. Now imagine if we privatize Eskom and experience the same greed. The DA promises to allocate police officers to crime hotspots. This obviously makes sure that if there is an area that is identified as a crime hotspot, then the police will be there to meet the criminals when they get busy. Areas like Johannesburg CBD come to mind. Johannesburg CBD is actually a serious problem. That's the area where foreign nationals from the Middle East and Northern Africa sell counterfeit goods and cheap imports that have not paid taxes. So that is a big deal. I did not see the ANC saying anything like that. The DA are seeking to get rid of the bloated senior management of the police. We need more experts that require great results from our police and not too many aircon officers, less bench warmers and more boots on the ground. The DA wants to make sure appointments and promotions are based on merit. No BEE, no women this and gay that. We want competent, fit officers. I don't see them talking about fitness here, though, which I think is an important requirement for our police. What do you guys think? The DA wants to make sure that whistleblowers are protected. That is what we are talking about. BIDBZAJJ was assassinated for being a patriotic citizen who snitched on the ANC tenderpreneurs. To this day, we have no arrest of the masterminds. We need people like her to be protected at all costs. Minister BidbZAJJ and President Cyril Ramaphosa definitely should have resigned on the several times that people got assassinated after reporting corruption. The DA also want lifestyle audits on senior police. I mean, we can't have police officers driving around in G-Wagons and Lamborghinis on a salary of 20,000 or even 50,000 rand. We need to be vigilant here, so that is excellent. The DA also seeks to address farm murders, livestock thefts, and land invasions. They also want to tackle gang-related violence. They seek to implement school awareness programs. They wish to invest in youth development programs for skills and self-development. The manifesto promises to make sure judicial officers are appointed on merit. Not the rubbish we saw when MPs were grilling candidates regarding what black languages they speak and what color they are. This is why we have these racists and drunkards as judges. We need honest, fair, and competent judges appointed on merit alone. We don't care what race or gender you are. We want excellent results and excellent policy. The DA also wants to make sure that the power to appoint senior officials in the national prosecuting authorities is in the hands of the parliament and not the president. This is a great point because we can't have presidents that place puppets in positions of power like what Zuma did when he appointed Dudu Myeni as a chairperson of the board of SAA. They also want to attract and retain competent people in the National Prosecuting Authority and ensure that it's well funded to fill the vacancies. That's the language we need to hear, right? We don't want to hear anything about women this and women that, white and black, what. We want to see vacancies being filled by competence. Their manifesto has also spoken about public sector entry exams. Yes, please do that. We need people who know what they're doing. We can't have people being made to run our country be as useless as some of the ANC people we usually see, right? They want to reduce the number of ministers. Excellent. Most of these ANC people are simply collecting paychecks and we cannot have that. Remember our video on the high number of ministers and their salaries compared to the countries with GDPs more than triple South Africa's GDP. Most of the ministers are unnecessary and their removal is what is necessary. The DA, just like the EFF, wants to increase the child support grant, which I totally disagree with. We don't have the money nor the desire to be raising child support grants here. As we mentioned in the video on Make More Babies, such policies encourage people to have children outside of wedlock and sometimes with irresponsible partners. It sets the child up for a disadvantaged life where he doesn't have the opportunities that his age mates raised by responsible, married, mature, and working parents have, thus increasing the inequality gap even further, one child at a time. Why would we want that? There are definitely people we need to help care for their children, but increasing grants risks rewarding reckless behavior. What the people need are jobs to help them care for their children. Again, I do not support the increase of SASSA grants. Instead of the SRD grant, the DA wants to institute a job seekers grant where you must prove that you're unemployed to get it. I don't see why we must continue with the social grant culture instead of creating a self-reliance culture. This is you as a DA continuing with the ANC problems instead of initiating solutions to those problems. Have you seen the number of unemployed South Africans? Do you really think that you giving them 350 or 370 or even 1,000 a month is the solution? Jobs are the only solution, not this nonsense. Teaching them skills that will help them create businesses that employ themselves and others is the solution, not this nonsense. Use our taxes to equip the unemployed to identify gaps and demands in the market. Some of them are graduates who, if trained, skilled, and equipped adequately, can come up with businesses that solve national and international problems while hiring fellow South Africans and making money from it. Social grants are not sustainable solutions. Jobs and businesses are. I don't know if the DA actually thinks grants are the solution or if they're just trying to increase their popularity with citizens. Either way, this is a terrible policy, DA. The DA wants to address and investigate corruption within the land reform process. This is a much needed thing. The land issue has been abused and misused and underused by the ANC for far too long. By now, the government could have owned majority of the land, but they have failed and their failure has given rise to EFF and MK. The DA wants to utilize the land that the government already owns to give to more people, and that is wonderful. Of great importance, the DA wants to end trade union control of teacher appointments and introduce a strict meritocracy for the sake of the learners. Learners are the only thing that matters, and we should want the best teachers to produce the best learners. The DA wants to make sure that students in tertiary education pay a portion of their tuition back to NSFAS. That is important to allow the nation to fund other students in future. I mean, we may call it free education, but there really is nothing free on earth. Education does not fall from the sky. Lecturers need to get paid. Lecture halls need to have good desks and chairs, lights and projectors. The computer and science lab need to have the right equipment to ensure that the students get the best in their years in university. All these things cost money, and as a society, there should not be any group of citizens that want to suck other citizens dry. We should all have a sense of contributing to the well-being of our nation and its citizens. Education needs to get funded, and currently taxpayers are paying for the education of some of our people. It's only fair that people also pay something back after graduating, and even if you don't graduate, you still must be required to pay back. There is nothing free on earth. The DEA aims to lower private healthcare costs and guarantee a minimum package of services. Why? Why can't the DA leave the private sector alone? If you believe that the private sector is too expensive, then make sure you improve the public health care. If you make the government clinics and hospitals high quality, the citizens start to trust them more. More people will cancel their medical aid, and inevitably the cost of private healthcare will fall, since the private sector will lose even more customers if their cost does not fall. The public healthcare issue is similar to ESCOM. If you remove incompetence and corruption from it and go back to the culture of merit, competence, patriotism, and having a sense of direction and ambition, the private healthcare will struggle to find customers. That was the South Africa of old, and we can go back to it. The DA wants to remove hurdles to performance of health facilities by making sure politicians have minimal influence on the people responsible for doing the work. They also want to make sure that if you have any prescriptions that you need repeated, you don't have to go to government clinics and hospitals only. You can actually go to private pharmacies and fill your prescriptions. A lot of the things that the DA wants to do seems like restructuring. It seems like it will be moving a lot of pieces around. I don't know if that is really necessary. I support a lot of the ideas they have, but some I don't see as that important. For example, the issue with ESCOM and public healthcare. They simply need to remove or retrain incompetent employees, root out the corrupt rubbish employees, and get them arrested and jailed according to the law. They need to make sure that the recruitment is done right. We need thoroughly experienced people running our institutions. Like they mentioned, no more BEE. They want to implement meritocracy. That is good. But they have a lot that they seem to want to do when it comes to healthcare. A lot of it I left behind because, geez. But basically, it's a lot of meddling with private sector clinics and hospitals, which I don't think is necessary. What we need from the DA is very simple. Fix the state-owned entities, remove race-based hiring, end crime, and jail the criminals on the streets and in the government. That's it. We as the voters are really not that complicated, hey? Dear voter, what do you think about the DA manifesto? Does it encourage you to vote for them? What do you agree and disagree with on this manifesto? This was the second manifesto. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss the upcoming manifesto reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned, and until next time, beware of the comrades.